On GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my Take at 10, the Supreme Court have made a supreme mess by blocking the Rwanda plan. When did policing our borders become so controversial? Also, as civil servants are given the go-ahead to work from the beach, you heard me right, has the public sector in this country finally lost the plot? I'll be asking former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe, and as the Chancellor prepares his autumn budget statement this week, I'll be asking Anne, can Britain afford tax cuts? Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. So, a packed show, lots to get through. There's a bit of competition tonight, but I've got a secret weapon. Find out after the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Israeli military has released video footage of what they say are hostages being kept in Al-Shifa hospital. The IDF alleges Hamas have hostages trapped inside and that a captive soldier had been executed. They say one hostage is from Nepal, one is from Thailand. They say they were allegedly taken from Israel on the 7th of October. Well, it comes as Israel's ambassador to the US earlier told ABC News he's hopeful a significant number of hostages will be released in the coming days. More than 200 were taken by Hamas on the 7th of October. So far, 4 have been released. Well, the Israeli military has also released footage of what it says shows a 55-metre-long terror tunnel 10 metres deep underneath Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza. It says the footage clearly proves that numerous buildings in the hospital's complex are used by Hamas as cover for terrorist activities. Hamas has denied the allegations. GB News understands that Russell Brand has been interviewed by police. A man in his 40s, believed to be the actor and comedian, attended a police station in South London on Thursday. He was interviewed under caution by detectives in relation to 3 non-recent sexual offences. Homes near new electricity pylons could stand to benefit by up to £10,000 over a decade. The government is set to announce the move to overcome planning objections and speed up the approval of new energy infrastructure. Homeowners could get £1,000 off their household bills every year, though the Treasury hasn't specified where that money will come from. Plans to use drones as first responders in police emergencies are being trialled next year. The cutting-edge concept, known as Project Eagle X, is to be tested in Norfolk. If successful, the flight devices would be stationed on buildings and operated remotely to give police early information on a situation before crews arrive. And finally, a service was held at the Cenotaph in London today, commemorating the 102nd anniversary of the first wreath-laying by Jewish veterans. Service people and families of the fallen marched together down Whitehall to honour those who fought and served for freedom since the First World War. The first Star of David wreath was laid in 1921 by a group of Jewish ex-soldiers. This year's parade also marked the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and 70 years since the end of fighting in the Korean War. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now back to Mark.
Well, Tatiana is an old friend of mine. We go back. Great to have her doing bulletins on tonight's show. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. As civil servants are given the go-ahead to work from the beach, you heard me right, has the public sector in this country finally lost the plot? I'll be asking former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe. And as the Chancellor prepares his autumn budget statement this week, I'll be asking Anne, can Britain afford tax cuts? Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. This evening, GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, former government advisor Claire Pearsall, and TV news legend John Sargent. So, a packed hour, and those papers are coming. Let me tell you, I'm not going to lie. Cut the music, Faye, for a second, if you don't mind. There's a bit of competition tonight. But here on Mark Dolan tonight, we've got a secret weapon. What is that secret weapon? We have cat videos all evening. So, Maria, let's start, as we wish to go on. Play me some lovely cats. More cat videos to come. ITV, eat your heart out. But we start with my take at 10. When did it become controversial to police your borders? Territorial boundaries define a nation-state and always have done. Hey, in the good old days, even cities had walls and gates. It wasn't unfashionable then, but it seems to be now. In 2023, with technology and surveillance, that should make us more secure than ever. But our borders are currently more exposed than a Britney Spears selfie. It isn't complicated. Countries should decide who comes in and who doesn't. Why else would we need customs officials and passports? Except these days, passports are an optional extra. Which is why no court in the land should usurp a government policy to stop illegal crossings in the Channel. Crossings which are a national security, economic and humanitarian disaster. People are being extorted by criminal gangs, paying thousands of pounds for the promise of a better life, and some are dying as they make that perilous journey. Later this month is the 2-year anniversary of the English Channel disaster, where 27 people lost their lives at sea. Illegal immigration is costing the country, that's you and me, over £3 billion a year, including £8 million a day on hotels. That's money that can't be spent on the health service, on defence, on education or policing. The national security threat is also a clear and present danger as well. Don't take my word for it. The Mail report that a manhunt has been launched to locate 6 terror suspects who arrived in Britain on small boats in the last couple of weeks. The illegal migrants, who all have links to Islamist groups, started the journey in Syria and travelled to Europe before crossing the Channel. Their arrival brings the total number of terror suspects who have entered Britain on small boats this year to 25. But is that the number, which is only a tip of the iceberg? How will we ever know when many crossing following legal advice chuck their phones and documentation into the sea? Which is why the Supreme Court's intervention in regards to the Rwanda plan, deeming it unlawful, is such a problem. Set up by Tony Blair, this highest court in the land has entered the political fray, something that no court should ever do. Now, I don't know the politics of these judges, and I'm not a fan of language like enemies of the people. But in a sense, they are the enemies of the will of the people, who want an end to this crisis. Democracy should trump the judiciary every time. It's Parliament that should be sovereign, not dusty lawyers in grey wigs. Too many members of the judiciary are happy to kick this issue into the long grass for the foreseeable future. Some profit from it, advising those who have broken the law on how to stay. Others simply pursue their own political goal of a more open borders policy. This collision of politics and the legal system is now blurrier than a night out with Paul Gascoigne. But what the judicial and political elite don't realise is that this is a national emergency and the people have had enough. Mark my words, sitting on our hands won't wash with the public, who I predict will look favourably on any party that is serious about reasserting the boundaries of this country. Which is why tackling the small boats crisis is Rishi Sunak's only hope of another 5 years in power. We can't carry on like this. It was the wise words of French President Emmanuel Macron, for whom my admiration grows daily, who said in a recent television interview that Western countries like Britain and France cannot accept the misery of the world. It's an honest remark, and we need an honest conversation about what it means to be a country again, and whether we're willing to defend our identity, our territorial boundaries, and our very existence. It's the politicians that should be running this country, not lawyers, which is why the Supreme Court should be recalibrated or, if necessary, disbanded so that Parliament is once again sovereign. The lawyers are the guilty party here. Send them down. Do hope I haven't damaged the desk. Your views, mark at gbnews.com. Let's hear from my top pundits tonight. Former government advisor Claire Pearsall, TV news legend John Sargent, and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Claire, your reaction to the intervention of the Supreme Court, stopping the boats and, I argue, thwarting the will of the British people?
It's not thwarting the will of the British people. What they're doing is upholding the law. They're making a judgment based on fact, which is what the judiciary is there to do. There were so many problems with the Rwanda plan. It was put together so hastily that none of these legal challenges were ever considered properly. No one looked at how they could make it better, or indeed if there was a plan B that they could go to. So really, it's the government that has thwarted the will of the people, not the judiciary.
However, John Sargent, these dusty lawyers, they don't want the Rwanda plan. They are ideologically against it.
No, I don't think it's a matter of they. I think it's a matter of what is the position under law. The Supreme Court were asked a simple question, is it legal? And the answer they gave, which was a very sophisticated answer, which was, it depends what happens in Rwanda when you're trying to get through the normal asylum process. And that was the bit where they couldn't be convinced this could be carried out legally and sensibly in Rwanda. The amazing thing is that we weren't told this before. We weren't told that actually the position in Rwanda is so rickety in terms of considering all these asylum claims. And remember, the backlog in Britain at the moment is 30,000. So there are 30,000 perfectly legal asylum claims that have not been dealt with here, let alone sending people to Rwanda. So the whole Rwanda plan is now completely in tatters. And to have the government running around saying, oh, we're going to use everything we can, we'll overturn whatever we need to overturn, they can't, because the court has been quite specific about this. It's not saying it's not illegal to deport people, except you've got to give them a chance of having their asylum claims properly looked at. And we can't guarantee that in Rwanda unless we take over Rwanda. We can't do that.
Well, I've got plenty of viewers and listeners, Nigel Nelson, who will be furious that the Supreme Court have thwarted this policy. And it looks like the government are going to draw up legislation in order to reinforce the primacy of our parliament. And so they should.
Well, and what the government seems to be doing is to try and say, OK, so the Supreme Court said that Rwanda is not a safe place. That's all they were asked to decide.
Which it is.
Well, we not according to the Supreme Court. I mean, part of the evidence there was that the Rwandan government send people over here to kill Rwandan exiles, or at least try and kill them. Well, that doesn't sound like a country which respects human rights, and certainly not one that respects British law. But on the basis of what the Supreme Court were doing, it was, as Claire has just said, it was interpreting the law. It was looking at the law as passed by Parliament, nothing to do with taking away parliamentary sovereignty. And if you decide you want to actually replace the Supreme Court, what with? The reason it was set up was to take it out of the House of Lords, which had previously been the highest court in the land, and that was to give more protection for the citizen from the state, because it was unsatisfactory having judgments made about Parliament, in Parliament, by parliamentarians.
OK, well, listen, folks, it's a very busy show tonight. We've got a special surprise at 10:40, 3 studio guests, and I can't tell you what they're going to be talking about or why, but let me tell you, it's worth waiting for at 10:30. But coming up, as civil servants are given the go-ahead to work from the beach, has the public sector in this country finally lost the plot? I'll be asking former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe. Plus, there is a bit of competition elsewhere tonight on TV. But there's one secret weapon that we've got that the others don't, and that's cat videos. More of those next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's on your teeth.
It's on your teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, you're going to love this story. Oh, by the way, can I just say, live telly, folks, very excited about this, right? There is a bit of competition tonight elsewhere, but I like a challenge. I think that Mark Dolan tonight is the strongest television product out there right now, and I'm often beating Sky News about now, but there is heavy competition elsewhere. But we have the ultimate secret weapon. Throughout tonight's show, we've got cat videos. So, Maria and Faye, do your worst. Brilliant stuff. More cat videos to come, and a very special part of the show at 10:40. 3 very, very unique individuals live in the studio. Find out why I short you. I can't tell you. I've got to keep stum. Big surprise at 10:40. But you'll love this story. This will surprise you as well. Civil servants have been given the green light to work remotely overseas, prompting concerns that some will choose to log in from the beach. Staff at the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero are among those who can apply to work abroad for 2 weeks a year whilst visiting friends and family overseas. The Senior Civil Servants FDA Union says many of its members have connections outside the UK and should be eligible for international remote working for the benefit of their family life. This comes on top of the government's ongoing struggles to get civil servants and other members of the public sector back into the office 5 days a week post-pandemic. So let's get reaction from tonight's newsmaker, former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe. Anne, your reaction to this outrageous story. Work from the beach. Have you ever done that?
Well, hang on. They didn't entirely say work from the beach. They said work from abroad. Now, I speak as one who, on a holiday in Singapore, wrote several chapters of a book. And that was because I was indeed visiting very long-standing friends and my old alma in Singapore. And there was time during the day when everybody else was working when I wrote a book. Now, what you've got to ask is this, and this is the crucial thing, and I can't understand why people don't focus on it. Whether people are working in it from abroad or from home or from the office, the same standard should apply when it comes to assessing their work. And if somebody is obviously having a great time on the beach and not producing the work, then that employer has exactly the same sanctions as he would have to somebody who was idling in the office. Now, I don't understand why that isn't the crucial determining factor, that the employer, be it public or private, that the employer assesses the work by the same standard he or she would if it was in the office.
Well, look, Anne, I take your point, but Anne, you're a one-off. You are unique. Not everyone has Anne Widdecombe's fierce work ethic and self-discipline. And you're right, perhaps it doesn't mean working from the beach. Perhaps it means working from the wine bar or working from the buffet. The bottom line is that this sends out the wrong message, Anne, and you won't get an offer like this in the private sector.
Well, you might well get an offer like that in the private sector if you were producing the work, because all the private sector's concerned about is the quality of the work that you produce. And that is the driving force. And if you're not good in the private sector, you'll find yourself out. And we need exactly that approach in public life. But, you know, you say they're doing it from the wine bar. You don't know that. They could be doing it, as I was, from a friend's house. I have dealt with government business before now while I was abroad because something came up while I was abroad. And pushed aside the holiday and dealt with a piece of business that I had to deal with. Now, you know, in this day and age, remote technology, there's no darn reason why people shouldn't work remotely, but the word there is work. And that should be the determining factor. Are these people producing respectable work?
OK, well, look, if they're all Anne Widdecombe's, they can work wherever they like, but otherwise, it's my view, get back in the office. Anne, I'll tell you who's spending a lot of time in the office at the moment is the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, preparing his autumn budget statement. It's happening this week. He's told reporters that everything is on the table, including potential cuts to income tax and inheritance tax. Here he is talking to GB News' very own Camilla Tominey this morning.
I do believe that if we're going to be a dynamic, thriving, energetic, fizzing economy, we need low tax and we need taxes to be lower than they are at the moment. We're not going to do anything irresponsible, particularly by which I mean anything that fuels inflation.
Now, Anne, you've been calling for tax cuts for a long time. You want to put a tiger in the tank. You want the economy to grow, grow, grow. I'm with you on that. But can we talk about inheritance tax? Because is a cut in inheritance tax justified, given that many who have nothing to inherit are already struggling to make ends meet?
Well, the people who are also struggling are those who live in areas where property prices are immensely high. Who may have bought or themselves inherited an entirely modest piece of property, which now is sky high in price. And so when they die, it's assessed on the current price and money is taken. But it doesn't actually mean that they are wealthy and living a privileged life. And they're the sort of people who are trapped by inheritance tax. So I've got to say, I'm very happy for it to come down, but above all, I want to see business taxes come down. I cannot believe.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Cut off in her prime, the brilliant Anne Widdecombe. She hasn't been censored, I promise you that. Anne returns in a week's time. Folks, so much more to get through, let me tell you. Coming up, we've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. Lots to get through, don't go anywhere. And more cat videos to come. See you in 2.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. We're doing something very special, very different at 10:40 in just 12 minutes' time. So hold fire and find out a little surprise that we've got lined up. But there is a bit of competition elsewhere on TV tonight, but we have a secret weapon, not just my brilliant pundits, but cat videos. Maria, take it away. Plenty more where that came from. But listen, let's have a look now at tomorrow's papers. So we'll just start with The Independent right now. And 16 years in prison for stealing a bike. No hope of release is the headline there. That is the fate of just one of 3,000 inmates trapped in prison serving indefinite jail terms. As The Independent reveals, 7 held under scrapped imprisonment for public prosecution orders having killed themselves. Also, premature babies finally evacuated from Gaza hospital. This amid news that some kind of release of hostages could be in the offing, and we can only pray that that's the outcome. Now, Faye, we don't have any other front pages right now, do we? But what we'll do is come back to me, bring me back in vision, if you don't mind, because we do have hard copy. So let's go old school. John Sargent will remember the days when presenters would just hold the front page up like that.
Of course they would, and brilliantly. You do it very well.
Nothing wrong with that, is it? So let me tell you, folks, that the front page of the Daily Mail, are we finally on the brink of a real tax cut? After economy turns the corner, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, now weighing up radical plan to cut the rate of income tax or national insurance. And as I mentioned earlier, and this is good news, front page of the Telegraph, it's in small print, let me read it to you. Israel on the brink of a hostage agreement with Hamas. Also, wealthy pensioners may not need winter fuel cash, suggests Tory MP. And minister sacked for siding with Suella Braverman. OK, and last but not least, just for now, we've got the Metro, and I'll hold it up for you again. How good is your eyesight, folks? Should have gone to Specsavers. Other opticians are available. TV Comics sex assaults interview. Met Police quiz Russell Brand. If you thought that story had gone away, you can think again. Let's get reaction to the big stories of the day with my top pundits tonight. Former government advisor Claire Pearsall, TV News legend John Sargent, and GB News' very own senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Well, it's the million-dollar question, isn't it, Nigel? Taxes, to cut or not to cut?
Well, I mean, I think it should be not to cut. Inflation is not down. Jeremy Hunt has been saying all the way along he can't cut taxes until it is down. Now, OK, we've got it at 4.6%. That's looking good. But until it's 2%, you shouldn't really...
Because you think that a tax cut will put money in people's pockets and boost the economy economy, which is going to create inflation again. Is that really the concern?
The more money you put into this, is the whole point about interest rate rises. It takes money out of the economy, put it back in, and inflation goes up. So the danger, what Jeremy Hunt was looking at was a non-inflationary tax cut, which was inheritance tax, that may be off the table now. But that only goes to the wealthy. That's the reason that he's gone against it. But it's not inflationary because people don't splurge their inheritance. Give them an income tax card, and that pumps more money into the economy and likely to fuel inflation. So the whole thing could backfire on him if he is going to do this, because inflation will suddenly go up next month.
Well, you are our key Westminster insider. Are you suggesting to me that the inheritance tax cut will not happen?
No, that it may be postponed. At the moment that the...
So announced but delayed for a year or something?
He could do it that way, yeah. But I think that he's moving away from it because a lot of criticism, only 400 people pay it. So the only people who benefit are the wealthy. It does absolutely nothing for the cost of living.
Yeah, I mean, is this talk of an inheritance tax moving the dial for the government, is that a red herring, John?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's the kind of thing which they'd like to put in the manifesto or people should be aware of. Now, the key thing seems to be quite simple. They need the headline tax cut. Now, you then say, what is a tax cut and how does it look? It looks good in the headline. They need it to work back from the headline rather than work back from, it's
like a comedian that does the punchline and then comes up with the setup later.
Exactly. The punchline is perfectly clear. What are we going to see in the Daily Mail after this? Well, we're going to see on Thursday morning, tax cut.
Yeah, and John, it's interesting, there's a tension there for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. Political pressure to cut taxes, economic pressure to hold fire.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing to bear in mind is that they're doing better than expected. The economy is doing better than expected, and therefore more money has come in because they didn't reduce the tax bands. I mean, it's called fiscal drag, but I mean, it's an irritating phrase. What it means is that people are still working on the tax rate they were being hammered with last year. So if you just hold that at the same level, more money comes in. So then look at the books, think, oh, actually we've got some room to manoeuvre, but it's not very much room for manoeuvre. And let's assume also that we're moving towards a budget that's got to be it's got to be an election-winning budget. If they have any hope of winning the election, that's got to come next spring. So don't do it all now in an autumn statement, but a few promises and the headline tax cut. That'll be enough to go on with.
Green shoots of recovery, not just for the economy, but for the Tories, if this good news continues, Claire?
Can I be really cynical?
Do it. That's why we love you.
Because I think that this is a bit of flag flying. I think this is, let's put some policies out there, see how it goes down, get the feel of the country. And anything that they're going to pull out of the hat, any kind of big tax story is going to come in the spring. You've got an election which is looking ever more likely to be next year early rather than late. So I would say, with my sort of political hat on, that if you're going to do it, you do it in the spring and you run into an election off the back.
So that's March. So traditionally, that's when the big budget used to happen, didn't it? Yeah. So a March statement with a whole sort of flurry of tax cuts.
Precisely, you go to the
splash the cash
in May.
In May. So are you thinking that a late spring poll?
Yeah, I really, really do, because I just don't think at the moment that there is enough to play with. And obviously, I've got John and Nigel, who are vastly better at the economy than I am, but the politics of it would suggest that there isn't much you can do in the winter. Your pressures are too high at the moment. There isn't enough sloshing around to be able to give people something that's going to materially make a difference. Inheritance tax doesn't make a difference to the majority of people. It isn't a great vote winner,
but it
may be a better vote winner.
So it doesn't cost much, John argues, but it makes the headline.
Relatively doesn't cost much. And also, what you've got to be careful, I think they've got to be careful, is that if you have too much of this, are we on the brink of a tax cut, and you don't produce it, it's like the boats again.
Yeah.
They say the boats are going to be solved, then, they're not being solved. And then they say they're going to tax cuts, they're going to be cutting taxes, we're all expecting it, and whoops, it's not there anymore. You've got to be careful where it just looks as if whatever the government do, it crumbles. Now, that is dangerous. Politically, it's very dangerous now. So if there's nothing in the kitty, what on earth are they up to now?
How
2 days before.
How potent are tax cuts as an electoral tool, Nigel?
Well, everyone likes to have a tax cut. So, I mean, if you can actually deliver it, and you can deliver it without wrecking the economy into the process, this was the problem Liz Truss faced last year. She was trying to deliver tax cuts, but they were unfunded, and the markets then started crashing. So, at the moment, it looks like that Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak are being held hostage by their right wing, who are demanding tax cuts. Unless it's something major, it'll just be a gimmick, a bit like Rwanda, because that's what they're being held hostage over as well.
OK, well, listen, folks, I can now tell you what is about to happen, because coming up, our exclusive post-match analysis of our very own Nigel Farage's sensational I'm a Celebrity debut, with a top insider who knows him better than most, as well as TV star Christine Hamilton. And we're going to hang on to John Sargent as well, because John, of course, has done his fair share of reality TV as well. Takes two to tango. So, folks, we were very, very excited.
You sneer at me at this stage.
Never. Listen, full of admiration. I can't. I've got two left feet, let me tell you. Ask Mrs. Dolan. But there you go. So, post-match reaction, ringside action. I'm a Celebrity. It's more or less come to an end now on ITV. And we will be having a deep dive into how Nigel came across. That's next. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, listen, harsh words from Mick in Stafford in regards to the illegal crossings. I'm no mystic, Meg, says Mick, but the only way I see attitudes hardening towards illegal migrants is when some atrocity is carried out in the UK by the fanatical religious extremists among them. Well, Mick, I certainly hope that that doesn't happen, but you're right to raise your concerns. David says, Mark, the Supreme Court should not have any say in politics. They are an unelected body, just like Cameron. He should also not interfere. Regarding tax cuts, let's have a look at this from Alistair. Can Britain afford tax cuts? Hi, Mark. The only fair way to cut tax, which gives the same to all, is raise the threshold at which income tax becomes payable. This would reduce fiscal drag and put the same amount of money into the pockets of the people. Thank you, Alistair. Well, listen, folks, I've been dropping hints all night. The competition out there has been quite stiff because Nigel Farage has entered the jungle. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. The first episode has just aired. I think it's coming to an end in a couple of minutes. So what we've done, in order to prop up the very stellar ratings that we enjoy here on Mark Dolan tonight, we've had cat videos, because I know that you love a cat video. So well done to Maria for editing these earlier in the day. So, Faye, let's play out our final cat video before we sink our teeth into Nigel Farage. There you go. Mark Dolan tonight will always give you the news alternative. Now, Maria, I want you to keep an eye on ITV. Let me know when those closing credits start to roll. In the meantime, let me tell you that before we went on air, yes, I was very busy getting my Take at 10 ready, getting the facts together, getting my opinion sorted, but I did take a few minutes to watch Nigel in action. There is our amazing days. John Sargent, Nigel Nelson, Claire Pearsall, Maria Murphy, my producer, Mess Garner. And then there's me, biting my nails, worried about Nigel. I want him to come across well. What a smart office we got, don't you think? Brilliant stuff. I think also a tweet has gone out from Nigel's official Twitter account. And I think we've got the tweet. When you hear David Cameron is back, hashtag I'm a celeb. Now, let me just say that I have watched a good hour of I'm a Celebrity. That was 9 till 10. And I think Nigel has come across brilliantly. He's been the guy that we know him to be, personable. He hasn't fallen out with anyone. He's done his first challenge. He took it like a man. He's getting on with folk. He's chuckling away. He looks like he's having a brilliant time. So, Nigel, so far so good. Well done, mate. You are smashing it. But let's get reaction from three proper experts. Columnist and former UKIP MEP, a man that knows Nigel well, Patrick O'Flynn. TV star and former I'm a Celeb contestant, the very first series, Christine Hamilton, and television news legend John Sargent. Patrick, first impressions of what you've seen so far from Nigel?
Yeah, Mr. Congeniality. I think he's gone in there with the ambition of broadening his base, broadening his appeal. I think with a political ambition still to be bounced into in the new year. And I think, personally, he's likely to be successful. I think Grace Stent and him might not. Right,
she's a sort of Guardian food writer.
Very much.
And she's written some quite harsh things about him in the past. I think she even joked about his air crash that he was involved in.
That's right. But I think as well, Fred Syria is also a Remainer. Yeah. But I think Nigel and him will get on fine. I just think that's the one thing that Nigel and Grace Stent, I predict, won't be a meeting of minds. But I think he'll get on famously with everybody else.
There you go. Back to me for a second, if you can, because let me just say one thing. I watched the opening little skit from Ant and Dec. Now, I'm a big fan of Ant and Dec. I used to work with them. Two nicer men in TV, you won't find. But they started the show with jokes about GB News. Yes, folks, they can't stop talking about us. And what they said is that it's very unfortunate for GB News' viewers to lose Nigel Farage. So they said, we're going to apologise to the GB News viewers for taking Nigel off you. So we want to say sorry to, what were they called, Maria? Keith and Linda. That was their gag. They said, sorry, Keith, sorry. So their joke is that we've got two viewers. Well, we know that we've got plenty more than that, but it's great that Ant and Dec are now talking about GB News on the national airwaves. And I think, Christine Hamilton, that's another big advantage of Nigel going into the jungle. It brings a lot of eyes onto Nigel and a lot of eyes onto us.
It absolutely does, and so far he's done brilliantly. When things might start to break down, not for Nigel necessarily, but is when they begin to get on each other's nerves. At the moment, all we've seen is very palsy-walsy, and they've done their trials, and of course Nigel did brilliantly. He got all three, as we knew he would. I think he'll get voted for trials, until people realise that he just does them, and that's boring. They want people to not do the trials.
Have a horrible time.
Have
they
a
want
horrible
people
time.
crying.
They do, and they don't want people to bring home the stars, because that means they don't get any food, and then they all get grumpy and crotchety, and they get on each other's nerves. But to be honest, I am having difficulty sorting everybody else out. I was sitting there earlier on writing these little notes, and I mean, it's awful. I've put sort of Toothy, Gobby, that sort of thing to try and...
You've had to give them nicknames because you don't know who the hell they are.
Because I don't know who they are. But I'll tell you, the one thing I think is good about this programme, not the one thing, is that people vote positively. You vote for the person you want to stay in when it gets to that. At the moment, you're voting for trials. But it means that people can't gang up on Nigel and all say, we'll vote him out, the people who don't like him. You can't do that. You have to vote positively. So I think he'll do really well. I don't know whether he'll win because I don't yet know who the others are. He may not be quite sort of generally all-rounder nice enough, because those are the people who win. I can say that because I didn't win. You see, I wasn't nice enough. Tony Blackburn won. No, Tony Blackburn won. He was much more wholesome than I am.
Well, I don't know. I'll take Christine every day of the year and look at that with a little shiner. You really walked the walk. John Sargent, your perception of Nigel's performance so far, his body language, do you think he's enjoying it, or is he already regretting his decision?
No, he's not regretting it.
Loving it.
I think the key point is that what you've got to do on these reality shows, if I can say this, is you've got to take the rules very seriously, but not take yourself seriously. Now, the problem will be is if he really thinks, actually, I'm going to get cross, I don't like this, and show his feelings, and then he's lost the game. So it's not sort of... He knows the rules, he knows exactly what he's meant to be doing, he's meant to be able to laugh at himself, but I think he finds that particularly difficult. I think he will find all sorts of getting on with people very well, but there could be one point where he may just say, I just hate you all, I just hate this. And I think you should realise this, or suddenly take himself seriously.
Because there comes a point, doesn't there, when I've done a bit of reality TV where you forget you're on television because it's 24/7.
Yeah, you do.
And you can't disguise who you are for 3 weeks solid, can you?
No. But what you've got to do is, obviously, being used to being on television is a tremendous advantage. So you're really not bothered, and you're not listening to people at home saying, I like the bit where you did this. He's got to be very careful not to watch the rushes, not to try and get any description of what he's doing.
He can't. There's absolutely... You are completely and utterly cut off.
Good.
You don't even know what time it is, what day of the week.
Don't you ever get messages, though?
No,
messages of any
nothing
kind.
at all.
What about it? Can he have a secret stash of old speckled hen or anything like that, or some chewing tobacco?
I have heard, and I
bit of snuff.
Really hope this is not correct, that he's going to be allowed to have cigarettes, which I think is outrageous. If I was in there with him and he was having cigarettes, I would demand alcohol. He says he can't live without cigarettes. I can't live without my glass of wine. It's supposed to be a level playing field.
But they won't keep their word.
I hope that's not true.
They'll just take the cigarettes from him.
Well, I hope so.
Great fun. Then at that point, he may get cross.
Patrick,
he may.
You know Nigel well. Is there a potential downside? Could he lose his rag? Tell me about the darker side of the man we love.
Go on, Patrick. Go on.
Back in the day, he has a what could you say? A sort of he's got a sort of steel, hasn't he?
He certainly has. I mean, back in the day in UKIP campaigning initially to force an EU referendum, onto the table, and everyone in the established parties sort of mocking us. Nigel was as hard as nails, and the saying in the party was, whenever there's a power battle, Nigel always wins, right? And he was very clever when he stood forward, and also if there was a difficult election coming up, he would stand down as party leader and let someone like the great Lord Pearson take the tough election, or Paul Nuttall. So he's very clever at identifying his opportunity. I think he's so interested in the TikTok generation. He went to the Tory conference. He was mobbed by the teenagers there, the young people. He is very... He's almost like the Madonna of politics, like, you know, the performer Madonna, and he reinvents himself. I think he's strongly fixated on broadening his appeal, and he has big things politically in mind next.
Christine, some have been talking about boycotting the show. Do you think ITV have risked anything by putting Nigel in the jungle?
No, I don't. But just to pick up before I answer that and what Patrick... He is a born performer. He loves performing, and he's got an audience of millions and millions, and he will be 100% aware of that, even though he's used to having the cameras. But no, I don't think so. There's been all this thing on Twitter. I refuse to call it X, which I
Me too.
find
It's
sinister. It's horrible. It's Twitter. People, there's a hashtag boycott. I'm a celebrity. Some will, of course they will, but they probably wouldn't watch anyway. I think most people will be so fascinated to find out how they'll turn in, because from the flabby comfort of their armchairs with their gin and tonic at their side, they will want to see Nigel and others having a hard time. That's one of the deep attractions of the programme.
Have you seen yet any evidence, John, that the editors have got it in for Nigel? Could they stitch him up in the cutting room?
No, I think, if anything, the bit that I watched, the bit that I was terrified, was the Vertigo one, where they're suspended 100 metres above the ground in a skyscraper.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed that our Nigel wasn't there for that, and I thought that they were perhaps going easy with him. Because what if he didn't? What if he really found that too horrible?
Yeah. Now, I do understand Nigel's got a couple of historic injuries, hasn't he? He's got a problem with his neck and a problem with his back after... Was it a helicopter crash or a plane?
Light plane.
Light plane. So I suppose that might have been his get-out.
Well, I don't know, but he can't go on saying that. But that's particular, you know, people of his age... Vertigo is a key point.
Yeah.
People find difficult.
You're either like...
balance more difficult.
You either like heights, I love heights, or you're afraid of them. So maybe he said that he enjoyed heights, and that's why they cut him out.
Well, I think,
I think that would be hard for anyone.
Yeah.
Unless you're, in fact, very used to climbing up buildings and things. But at that height, it's I would have thought very nerve-wracking, and they were clearly very frightened.
I mean, what we read is that ITV may have paid Nigel considerably more than some of the lesser-known competitors.
Rumours of £1.5 million.
Exactly. And you know, they know he's...
Look at John's eyes lighting up. Next year, John.
They know he's, quote, a Marmite character. So, and also the show, I assume, makes most of its money on the premium phone lines. So lots of people ring in to vote for Nigel, lots of people ring in to vote against him. I would have thought the editors of the show would view it as a disappointment when Nigel to get knocked out before the last 3 or 4.
He won't.
Oh, they want him to be kept
He'll be in there a
They
long
don't want
time.
him to be injured. I mean, that's the key point. They don't want any of them to be injured. No, seriously. So all the snakes and things, any venom
You were
they
saying
might
when we were
have...
earlier, you said before we came on air that jungle's probably the safest place to be at the moment.
Well, it must be incredibly safe. What are the insurance companies doing? If I was insuring them, I'd say I think I'd be all right.
He'll be allowed to do all the snake, creepy, crawly eating trials. The only things he won't be able to do are what you might call the hard physical trials, where you might fall because of his accidents. But he will not be exempt from all the... And the thing that people loathe most of all, I think, are the eating trials. And the audiences at home love those. When I did it in the first series, only one person had to do that, and it was Uri Geller. And do you know, he set the standard. He just went right through 6 dishes, ate the whole lot, the disgusting stuff. And now they realise that the audience loves that. So now you'll find that almost everybody will have to do that at some stage.
Can he win it?
I think my prediction, he'll get to the final 2 because he's going in with a bigger fan club than anyone else, but he's also got a bigger kind of unfan club. So if there's a slightly sort of younger, glamorous, lovely person who in the final 2 is seen as the Stop Nigel candidate, they may pip him at the post. So I predict he'll come running.
He'll have to put on a bikini and go under the shower. That's what he needs to do to win.
That's a good idea.
I think the problem also, the public do tend to build people up.
Oh, yes.
They love to see them crash down.
Oh, don't they?
So, you know, I mean, the idea that, it's all lovely and it's all lovey-dovey and the public will love him and it's all simple. No, it could be just where it turns.
And ITV want it to turn, because that's the secret sauce of the show, for people to fall out, for things to go wrong.
Things to go wrong.
Yeah, they want rows.
And they want Nigel to say something outrageous that gets him cancelled.
Well,
Will he do that?
And they very carefully pick people who are not going to get on. They pick people who have completely different profiles. And I don't know about the others yet, but I bet they've got a winner on their hands.
Oh, listen, I'd go into the jungle with you three anytime.
Oh, there's a
Yes,
vote of
indeed.
confidence.
What a delight to be
Would
joined.
we still get on when we came out? That's the
Always.
trouble.
I'd have a secret stash of Jacob's Creek for you, Christine.
Thank you.
Just to keep you on side.
Cheers.
Thanks to Patrick O'Flynn, Christine Hamilton and John Sargent, my other brilliant pundits, my team, and you for your company. Headliners is next. See you on Saturday at 8.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. We're looking ahead to the new working week. It's going to be a bit of a grey and damp start out there. For some of us, it will turn dry during the middle part of the week, but then